Cape May. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mark. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Pim, my movie stars, you remember. I'm going to put them right in my room. Wait, where's my diary? Uh-oh, I forgot to pack my pencils.
No! Weren't you listening to me? You can't go down those stairs.
But it was only for a pencil.
Never! This is what going into hiding means. This is what I was talking about. And one mistake can cost all of us our lives.
I know, Father.
Remember, every day, Meep and Mr. Crawler will bring us books and food. They're friends and good friends. That's very rare these days. If the Nazis ever found out they were hiding us, they'd be deported too.
Your fountain pen?
No, it's your fountain pen now.
Pim, what a darling you are.
Oh, all those bags of beans.
In 1942, Anne Frank wrote in her diary, "It seems to me that later on, neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl." Some 55 years later, her diary has been read by millions of people in no fewer than 55 languages. There have been 2 stage adaptations, a film, an Academy Award-winning documentary, and countless dissertations and scholarly reports. Now, a revised version of the 1955 Pulitzer Prize-winning play has taken Broadway by storm. Joining me tonight for a conversation about the new production, Pulitzer Prize and 3-time Tony Award winner James Lapine, the director, Wendy Kesselman, the adapter of the play, and 2 of the stars, Linda Lavin, who portrays Ms. Van Dun, and Natalie Portman, who is, at the age of 16, making her Broadway debut in the role of Anne Frank. Welcome. Well, my apologies for the fact that you had to wait on a busy day, but I thank you. Let me start with sort of what makes this different. There was, well, you explained, why is this different than the previous play?
Huge question, but one of the main things that we wanted to do was really show what was happening at the time and show what was happening outside the annex. That is, what Holland was like, and which for me was a tremendous shock. When we went to Holland, we went to Amsterdam last May, and it was an upheaval for me because I expected to be going to the land of sweetness and chocolates and wooden shoes, and I found out that Holland was a very different story in the war than I knew. 90% of the Jews in Holland were murdered. It was a very efficient, perfect routine, and that, for me, became very much a base of what I wanted to show in the play. So one of the big things we've tried to do is show what was happening outside and how the outside world comes in on Anne. The other, well, there's so much, but yeah. I also wanted very much to show Anne's transformation because I had never realized what a writer Anne was until I reread the diary. I'd read it many times, but when I read it this time, I was just struck by how meticulous she was, what a wit she had, and how much she changed from the age of 13 to 15, which for me was not as fully explored as it could be in the old version.
There's so much to talk about here, and we're going to try to get into everybody participating in this, but there's also the fact that you later had 30% more material because her father.
It's a little different, actually, than that. What's interesting to me was that there was certainly her father removed certain things in the 1947 edition.
He discovered the diary.
Essentially the diary was discovered, he read it, and he didn't want to have it published initially, but because Anne had wanted so much to have it published, he decided he wanted to have it published. And someone read it, and there was a whole response to it. So in order to have it published, they wouldn't publish it without certain excisions, and therefore he took things out. And I think he wanted to take certain things out for Mrs. Frank, for his wife. But in fact, the really great things in the diary that I've tried as much as I can that I've put in, have always been in there. After that 47 edition, once it was published again, they've always been in there. The famous sexual thing about the breasts and everything has always been in there.
So there's nothing significantly added in terms of her own sort of sexual musings about, and as well as how she felt about her mother, what a conflict she had with her mother.
Somewhat, but very little. It's much more these big, amazing entries and very profound entries.
This ought to be said, and I'm trying to bring as much of a lot of material for focus. She wanted it published because she heard on the radio.
Yeah. That's an amazing thing that's not so usually known by Bolkestein.
Tell me the story.
Bolkestein, the Minister of Culture, who was in exile, as was the entire government during the war, left Holland and went to England, announced that he wanted documents, and one of the things he alluded to was a diary. We heard this on the radio, this family, one of which I portray, hear this, and she says, and well, this is not in the play any longer, but I remember the scene, and I said, Anne, remember, did you hear this, a diary, he wants diaries, and she said, yes, I heard Mrs. Van Daan, but he's not talking about Jews.
Never mentioned Jews.
Never mentioned Jews.
Right.
And then Mr. Van Daan says, who mentions Jews these days? And that's what was happening.
Put it back.
I think we should.
We may have a new play by the time we finish this conversation. Now, I ought to, one other point that comes
I
out.
should only remember my lines as well as I remember what's no longer there. No.
No, you remember that perfectly.
But the point is that she wanted it published, and that once she heard that, and here's part of the conventional wisdom, and you helped me tell me what's true and not true. She then went back and did some of her own editing of the diary.
Absolutely. And some of the editing that's so famous about these 30% is also Anne's. She knew that she wanted it done for publication. So some of the sexual things were removed not just by Mr. Frank, but by Anne herself. Yeah, she really wanted to be published.
Let me come to what I think is a huge challenge. You said how beautiful she wrote. This is one of the most important documents to come out of the war. The top of the list of documents that came out of the war. This young woman's diary. And what it says. How do you translate that? You introduce characters, you introduce her. But this diary is so powerful, and you're not doing the diary. You're doing the life of the people.
Yeah, it has to be a living piece of theater. I mean, I think what we all hope to do is to just catch the essence of it. You know, and what to me is always stunning about it is that she could go from being incredibly profound and dark and soulful to being incredibly almost immature and light and adolescent. And that's what we worked on, too, trying to find the soul of the character and bringing it on stage, and hopefully people will then go out and read the diary, you know, and it will inspire them to do so, but you can't be a slave to it either.
No. Tell me about you. This is your first Broadway play. You come with highly regarded note in making films, including The Professional, and including Heat, and including other things that I forget now. Tell me about playing this and approaching this, and how you find out about her, and what you want to accomplish in this.
Well, it's a really hard thing to approach because she's held so highly in regard by so many people. And people really, you know, she's become a sort of icon for goodness and being kind towards one another. But you can't present her that way, and that's the hardest thing, because it's kind of tempting, especially as an actor. You want the audience to like you. You know, you want to present a really kind, sweet, giving person. But I mean, no one's really like that. I mean, maybe there's a few, you know, Mother Teresa's out there, but you don't. Oh no!
We've been very busy working.
No. I know she's gone. Thank you. Thank you, James.
No.
No, I mean, there are
I would have
few
used
people.
the same reference. I mean, like the late Mother Teresa. Exactly the way
But she wasn't.
And your judgment is right. They're not men.
She wasn't. You know, you can't make her a perfect person, because she wasn't. And I mean, she was not living as an icon. She was living as a real person and had real interactions with people. She hated some people, she loved other people, and some people she loved and hated. And you can't try and, you know, make the audience love you the whole time. You have to play it real, and I think that was the hardest part for me, especially my first time on stage. You know, you really want the acceptance of the audience so much, and sometimes you have to make them hate you and you know, think you're annoying or irritating.
To capture the reality.
Yeah.
I mean, she's obviously had to be a young woman of high intellect, have intelligence,
Tremendous.
in order to write this, in order to have the power of her observations and feelings and articulation.
But she's also, what I found so amazing was that she was such a truly moral, a deeply moral person in the best sense of the word. And I think that's what Natalie is talking about. That is, Anne was absolutely honest, absolutely truthful, which is what, for me, Natalie brings to it so much. There's no, not a false
And if you're absolutely honest and absolutely truthful, then you have conflicts, you have feelings, you have...
She was honest about everything, and she was terribly critical of other people, but never any more critical than she was about herself.
As one who's up there on stage in this small annex, what are you trying, I mean, what are you trying to leave this audience with?
Well, I don't know that I am trying to leave them with anything. I think, but the pursuit of telling the story, Charlie, the pursuit of, this is going to attach itself to the question you asked Natalie, and all of us. I think the point of telling Anne Frank's story is that we are all as she saw us, not as anyone else did. But we all read the diary in rehearsal and came up with some things we'd missed or some things that we wanted Wendy and James to work on with us. The political argument between the Van Dans, we wanted very much to look at these people in terms of their depth and not just their superfluity, which was pretty much the way they had been portrayed earlier. I just speak from my character. And the work that was done that was so caring, but it's always through Anne Frank. Look how I point to her. And that's another problem. When I get upset with her, when she interferes in an argument with my husband, and I yelled at her. I looked at James one day and said, "Oh my God, I've just yelled at Anne Frank." You know, I mean, she becomes a very holy person. This is a kid. She's a 13-year-old. She's intrusive, and she's in the way, and she talks all the time, and she's bright, and she asks for too much. And I have a kid who's quiet and nice, the way a kid should be. This is how she saw us. That's the story we're telling. But to answer your question...
And that also connects with the diary. I mean, you make the diary, in a sense, by...
That's the diary that I think is what we all worked on, and what's the truth of it, is that it's her truth. It may not be anybody else's, but she listened, she perceived, she understood about these people, for a 13-year-old better than most of us ever understand human behavior, what makes people the way they are. Through her perceptions, we understand these people, through nobody else's. And that's what James and Wendy did so beautifully, was they addressed that. They addressed the development of this character and all of us through her eyes and her ears. But what we want to leave people with, people come back into our dressing rooms sobbing at the end of the evening, sobbing. And I'm holding friends, strangers, people who come to say, to show us what they have just been through. We know what they've been through because we've presented it. And they're afraid for us. They say, are you all right? You know, how do you do this night after night?
Well, that's the question I had, too. When I watched this, you didn't know whether to clap at night. You just wanted to stand and be silent. It's hard to...
But that's good. That's the great...
Silence is the greatest
when there's
compliment.
the silence, it's extraordinary.
I think what I like was when people say that they forget the story when they come in, and you get very involved with these people, and you don't play the ending. I mean, the most important thing for the actors going into it was not playing the ending.
That's right. You cannot, the challenge is you cannot play the end of this play. You cannot know what's going to happen to you. So that keeps you in the moment. You're living in cramped quarters with 7 other people at all times. Imagine spending a weekend with 7 people. On the best, you know, it's impossible. And so here it is with the enemy just outside, but so close. You know, and this was a heinous.
See, I always go to other people's houses rather than having them come to mine, so that I can leave when I was.
Exactly.
You know, but I mean, can imagine you.
Yeah.
But it was the exploration, may I just say that to address that, how we do it night after night, is I believe that it was the exploration for us that was the most painful. Now we perform it. Right. Now we know the behavior, but that all comes through daily exploration, the rehearsal. James put us in a room that was to scale the size of the annex. We were in each other's way. You'd go home at the end of the night, not be able to eat, with the profound sadness of living with the development of these characters, the anger, the fear that you lived with, which means you tap your own stuff in order to imagine what it was like to be them. And then there were times when we literally came back the next day and talked about how we couldn't eat and the nightmares we'd all had.
Nightmares?
Not necessarily Holocaust nightmares. Nightmares about, for me, I dreamt about my parents who are no longer here. I dreamt about people who are dead. I dreamt about stuff that was fearful to me. Dissociation, stuff that was particularly fearful to me. It all comes up in the painting of the canvas. Now, you know, the canvas is painted. We present the story. So it's not, for me, I'll speak for myself, as painful to do it as it was to discover it, but it is supposed to be painful for the audience. So that's what I wish to leave them with, that enormity of experience, the laughter and the fear and the pain and the anger, the reality.
What kind of a learning experience has this been for you? I mean, you're 16 years old.
It's been amazing for me, really. I mean, just doing this show has taught me so much about not only dealing with other people just through the story and through working with, you know, 8 other,
cast of people.
An amazing cast, but also, I mean, a lot about acting and a lot about Anne Frank, who I thought I knew so much about, and then as you're living her every night, you learn so much more. When you had the opportunity, when you were offered the opportunity to play Anne Frank, did you have any reservations saying, at all, or did you say this is an extraordinary opportunity to play someone that is... I had no reservations. I was reservations are not in your vocabulary. No, yeah. It wasn't at all. But one thing that, about doing it every night, one thing that scares me sometimes is that it doesn't, you know, after you do it for so long, it starts not affecting you. And that's what starts scaring me, when it doesn't make me cry at the end. That's when I go, wait a minute, I have to think about it. Because, you know, when you become used to it, it becomes a routine. You know, sometimes, some nights when you're tired, you're just on stage, and then you realize, you think about it, and then it just hits you. And the thing that happens is, you know, sometimes when you don't think about it, it won't hit you, and it won't get you upset. And then as soon as you start thinking about what happened, it affects you every single night. And that's what I had to learn on the play was, you know, when I first started doing it, it became hard for me to cry on stage after doing it for a while. And now it's like, I just, you know, there are certain thoughts that as soon as I get that thought in my mind, I just start crying.
She's full all the time. Full all the time.
Full.
And radiant. Luminescent, glowing, light. She's alive.
But one of the reviewers said this. I think Ben Brantley said something like that.
She's astonishing, her vitality. You know another thing, Charlie? I'm going to answer this question all night long, I guess. The answer comes to me. Is that people who know this story, people who know it well, people who visited Auschwitz, where they say they bore witness, where they felt the presence of those who died, have come backstage and said this was like bearing witness again. To see this play, even though they knew what happened, and we all know what happened, is to connect with these 8 people so deeply that you hope, in some innocence, that they're going to get away with it. You begin to go into denial and believe that maybe they'll get away with it. And I think that has to do with how personally involved they become with us as characters. It's the beauty of what James and Wendy created, because otherwise you have to deal with 6 million, and who can do that?
But it's also what's different about, when you ask what the difference in the versions are, because that version was so close to the war that people who saw that play had lived through the war, they had lived through the history. People today are not, particularly kids, they don't have any personal response to this part of history. So what's interesting about doing it again is you have an audience, and I'd say most of them are not, you know, of the generation that they lived through the war or bore witness or whatever. So it's the nice thing about it is being able to bring that into people's consciousness today.
It is. But you know, also when you read the diary, every time I read the diary, and I'm reading it all over again, I've started it all over again, yet again, you always are hoping they're going to get away. You always have that feeling right through to the end of it. I have it every time I read it.
Elaine May
it has
came
something
back
to
the
do
other
with her
night,
writing.
and she said that you hope, you're hopeful, and the audience, because, and she's pretty sophisticated, because the characters are hopeful. That's how strongly you identify with them. That you hope that they're going to, the liberation is so close.
It was so close.
They're going to get through it.
Was it 2 weeks, was it? What was it?
Well, in fact, Holland wasn't liberated for another year. But they, if they had not gone on the last transport out of Westerbork, because people, after that transport of September 3rd, 1944, that was the last transport. They were only in Westerbork a month. If they had managed to be in the annex another month, or if they'd managed to stay in Westerbork another week, they would have lived.
There are these differences too. I mean, and have you speak to it. One is that there's a lot of been written about this, all kinds of things, including this Cynthia Ozick piece. That was a piece that was in the New Yorker. I want to speak about that in a moment. But first, there is that line that I think ended the play, the earlier play.
Ended the play twice.
Twice, which
times
was, the line was,
I still believe that people are good at heart.
I still believe that people are good at heart.
In spite of everything.
In spite of everything. I still believe the various translations we can do too.
That's not there at the end.
Well, it's there, but it's juxtaposed. It was very important to keep the line in the context in which it was written, because they removed it. The Hackett's took it out of context. The diary entry is an incredibly...
The idea is that they put it where they did because they wanted you to have some sense of hope because of the...
Right.
And
the
you
line
felt
is,
what?
I felt very strongly. By the way, that particular line, when I found the old German paperback of the diary, that's the line that's written, splashed across the cover of the paperback version. So for me, it was very important. It wasn't a possibility to remove the line, but it was very important to have the line in the correct context of the diary entry, and also crucial for me to juxtapose it with something else. And that's, of course, not just the Nazis' arrival, but they arrived silently, if you remember.
I know, I was going to ask about that.
They arrived silently, which was true.
Yeah.
They did arrive silently. And then when Natalie says that, it's the first time we hear a scream from one of the Nazis. It's when he pulls the three kids out of the attic and screams, "Oh, house, out, you know, get out." So it was very important for me and for Jim, I think.
Is there more, in a sense, emphasis on Judaism here in this play, in this adaptation? More of a strong note?
What I think there's more emphasis is the fact that they were Jews.
Yes, of course.
All 8 of them were Jews.
Right.
And that it's spoken and that it's said.
Suggesting that in the earlier play it was less so.
Yeah, definitely less so. It's not, I don't think we had the feeling we wanted to emphasize it particularly, but just to tell what was true. Really to say what was true.
Because they were not religious people.
They were not.
Not all of them.
The Franks
Some
were
of them
totally assimilated.
They were very reform kind of Jews.
Beyond
so this
reform.
issue of, you know, more Jewish, less Jewish, I'm not quite sure what that's all about.
The Franks were really a highly assimilated German Jewish family, and the mother, Mrs. Frank, and Margot became somewhat more religious once they were with the persecution, once they moved to Amsterdam. But Anne and Otto remained virtually, you know, not at all.
Otto survives.
He's the only survivor of all 8.
He comes back and tells us what's happened. And that element is new as well, isn't it?
That's new, yeah. There was a different kind of...
And that's in the definitive diary, and that I read during rehearsals. And when the night that I read that and found out what happened to my character, who died in Theresienstadt, which is the only concentration camp I've ever visited. It's outside of Prague, where I went to make a movie once, and it, I just couldn't, I started to weep as I read it, and I do now. That reality, his coming back and telling us what happened to all of them, is to me one of the most powerful things I've ever experienced in the theater. Was it for you?
Yes, it was. I agree.
Yeah.
The most powerful, I thought.
It is a dynamic choice that Wendy and James made to let us know we didn't just disappear. What happened? What happened?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
You.
Thank you,
Thank
Natalie.
you.
Thank you, James. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.